Now, the news. On one world, there were structures of two types. Within one type, all was silent, while within the other, there was both silence and non-silence. Welcome to Earth. A story. There was once a man who decided that he wanted to be the world's fastest runner, and he practiced and practiced and sought tips from all of the other great runners, both living and dead. And finally, on several occasions, he did experience the sensation of having run as fast as is humanly possible. And yet, he still never felt himself to be successful in the pursuit. Now, there are several available endings to this story that immediately arise, but I will, for the instant, leave that to you. And now on to some non-metaphorical, really physical recreational news. One man had this little game which he could play, or which could play him. Pertinent the irrelevancy of thought to the lives men actually lead. Consider. Even after the government of a land is overthrown and demolished, its rivers continue to flow and its trees to grow, just as though the mortal powers had never existed. Headline, some nutritional news. Some nutrition news. The familiar is that upon which the mind, as is, will flourish. The fear of the few separates the many from the few. The fear of the new separates the many from the few. Some nutrition news. The familiar is that upon which the mind, as is, will flourish. The fear of the new separates the many from the few. Some knowledge news. If you already know it, forget it. Okay, I know that some of you are past this point. So, for you, the real skinny regarding knowledge. Those who take knowledge to be a substantial and objective reality don't know anything. And there's your complete story regarding the subject of knowledge. Those who, with happy anticipation, feel, I can hardly wait for tomorrow to come, never find the promise to pass. And the sorriest of the lot are not among the ordinary, but the mystics. To himself, one man recently speculated, is it possible, if I understand correctly what I'm saying, that I know too much? The far along trick then is to live your life, not be an observer of it. The mind says that we are wasting our time when we're not involved in trying to accomplish something. How far away from the few, from the view of the few. Headline, a rule no one wants to know about. Nothing is supposed to be any more enlightened or better than it already is. Those who understand nothing of life specialize in advising on behavior. Thus, in man's collective mental reality do institutions and experts flourish, while exclusively with but a few individuals is an interest in the other area of man's existence pursued. Who but lions, still lions, need lion training? Who but men, potentially real men, can benefit otherwise? A man who understands what is required attacks clamor with a stick, silence with flypaper. A man told a friend, I ran into my father the other day and he acted as though he didn't know me. What a nice father, he replied. Once a man accepts the illusion of a me within him, all of the other illusions are a foregone conclusion. Discovering the prime of the square root of 2 is inevitable once the former is determined. You should realize by now that of all the many things the human mind is, relentless is the irrepressible one. As long as you take the mental activity in your brain to be you, then compared to what you could be, you become the illusion of an endless energy flow, frozen in place like a statue. Headline, today's health news for those who understand what being alive is about. Most ills cure themselves. Hell, all do, but death. One doctor turned the examination back on himself and diagnosed, if it gets any simpler, I'm out of a job. Which is also what those struggling for enlightenment finally conclude. Headline, seriousness and how to get over it. Anything you talk about, you'll eventually take seriously. If you would but remind yourself of this, much uselessness would you avoid. The more you believe that you're far from your goal, the more you believe that you must struggle therefore, and thus the further away you stay. Nay, must stay. It's another one of those laws no one seems to know about. The trick is how to get back to yesterday. For everyone has a yesterday in which they were less thoughtful. A man looked down at his pedal extremity and said, "My foot is deformed." Then thought, "And my head is deformed for me to see my foot as such." And only he, his foot and head, understood what he had said. One man returned home for a visit and had this to say, "What you're all attempting to do is easy, to let go and to stop it. The hard part is that there is no way possible to tell one how to do this." After realizing what's going on, one man thought, "I see now that I was not foolish, laboring under illusion, or suffering from self-deceit, but simply mistaken." One man's favorite phrase is, "Stranger things than that are possible." No matter the occasion, no matter the circumstances, no matter the subject involved, it's always just this: stranger things than that are possible. Headline, the kind of professional those of ordinary mind should never patronize. After listing all of his complaints, and upon the completion of his examination, a man's physician asked him this: "Do you prefer to be ill and upset, or well and at peace?" "Why, hell! Why, well and at peace, of course," the man replied. "Then why do you remain satisfied being ill and upset?" "Well, I'm not upset, or I'm not so satisfied," rejoined the man, "as proven by my many appearances here in your office." "No, you have yet to recognize the nature of the reality in which scenes such as this are played. Still, to realize that any office visit here after the initial one is the proof of your unwitting acceptance and satisfaction with the world of ills that your mind describes." The only negative diagnosis possible regarding being a donkey, said one donkey to another, is in being one without knowing it. Those who do not see this are those referred to as blind and lacking the recognition of man's full mental potential. Beyond the realm of words and ills is another world entirely. After you've clearly seen once that it's all a balancing act, the challenge then is to never again put your hands on the balls, but keep them always in midair. Oh yeah, and one other thing. Once you know that it's all a balancing act, the way you trip up after that is by even getting serious about anything ever again. It'll kill you. In the public forum, among those claiming to be religiously, even mystically propelled, the subjects under discussion remain always confined to H, F, and F, health, feelings, and finances, whilst beneath the city streets, the truly driven are, at least at one time, interested in almost everything else but such matters. How long, I ask you, how long must these two groups stay so far apart? And since I asked, I'll answer, for friggin' ever, if the likes of us are lucky. And in regard to such affairs, a father shook his head and said to his son, how do you figure? I don't, replied the lad. Ah, looked down and sounded the elder. I see our positions begin to reverse. You taught me no less than well, said the child. Now you tell me this. How can you individually not do the same for yourself? Headline, The Secret Man, Surefire Spotter's Guide for Identifying the Insane. Anyone who takes what they say to be serious and meaningful is nuts. Technical footnote. The truly pathological and potentially dangerous are those who talk about things that can't be seen as though they are of consequence. You should always be alert and on guard that you do not come into close contact with such people, especially within yourself. Here's to your good mental health. That is, that you be free from a mental life. Only a man with no concern about anything, that's A-N-Y-T-H-I-N-G, no concern about anything, can be called enlightened. A pig who believes he is in slop will in slop forever be. From our dictionary, a healthy man is he who does not let anything harm him that can't be seen, at least through a microscope. To be ordinary in the head is to be asleep, in the dark, and ill. And to be so ill is to be sick from invisible causes. And to be so sick from invisible causes is to be ordinary, asleep, and in the dark. Get it? Now do you see how it works? If you allow it. The virus that afflicts the few lives in words. And once you begin to get well, you realize that the virus is words. The non-standard physician then said, be quiet completely, and you won't have to call me in the morning. Or ever again. A man visited a mystic and said to him, we have the same last name. We might be related. And politely the mystic replied, I am not related to anyone, which the man instantly realized would have to be true. Only those who talk have kin, and only those with kin must sleep in. A tip to assist you in rearranging the furniture. After your perception of life entails no sense of time, there ceases to be any sequential lines of events. Proclaimers who use their lives and incidents therein as exemplary proof of what they proclaim aren't worth listening to, even if they can fart stars and stripes forever as an accompaniment to their comments. Think about it, since no one else will. Anyone who believes that there were lessons learned in their life that propel them to a self-proclaimed present state of higher awareness are simply suffering from imaginary altitude sickness. Yeah, okay, maybe we got a bit overly verbose, so the straightforward version. Anyone who talks about themselves, period, is a world-class know-nothing. Gets the commonly cautioned dangers of becoming a follower down to an easily handled level, wouldn't you say, St. Judas? The collective mental world of man is like the balloon figures that make up Thanksgiving Day parades. It can only be through everyone contributing their share of hot air. Headline, newly established ground rule concerning the inner commentary aimed dead on at those attempting to succeed in these sorts of endeavors. Live your life, don't be an observer thereof. A man asked a wolf, "Why do you want to help the others awaken? So I can fuck all the other dogs and everybody else will look at me funny." One man asked another man, "What do you think about enlightenment?" "I don't think about it. That wouldn't be enlightenment." On the same page. Headline, newly noticed fact regarding the study of man of particular interest to people looking into activities such as this. The only aspect of man profitable to talk about is talk. When it comes down to the bottom line regarding knowledge, what is the one thing that everyone doesn't want anyone else to know about them? The answer, that they don't know anything. Once you can peacefully live with this fact, you can bear up under anything in the secondary reality. Since then, you realize that both knowledge and the pressures of the collective world are both mental fancies. None but illusionary labors trouble the mundane Hercules. Men waste their energy worrying about being able to tell when they are being fooled and misled. An easy problem to handle. If you are a participant in talk, you're being fooled and misled. Papa, when I grow up, I want to be exceptional. Then don't grow up in a certain manner you must discover for yourself. The alert find themselves drowning with no water in sight. To varying degrees, everyone continually feels that they are somehow lost. All you need to do is to turn around and face in the opposite direction. After all, that's where freedom and enlightenment always is. Headline, the eternal cosmic questions concerning guilt, totally answered and exposed. Talk equals guilt. No talk, no guilt. Media-related footnote. On planets where the inhabitants have long passed understanding this, they have only headlines and skip the stories. Does anyone get it? Poem pertinent to possible results of non-standard nourishment of certain herd animals. Through the noise and above the din, if this sort of knowledge does get in, it's the kind of feed that'll put you away, or at the least, offer your hay. The slave master looking out upon his field of labor was thought, a busy man is a captive man. And having satisfied himself once again with the stability of the situation, he turned and went about his other business, leaving those who toil and fret to toil and fret. To the few, freedom comes not through sweat or rebellion, but from discovery. Silent, Unhurried discovery. A mystic asked a man who claimed to be interested and experienced in the subject, "Do you prefer to be asleep and deluded or awake and enlightened?" And the man replied, "Awake, of course." The mystic said, "Then why do you stay asleep?" I think he was a physician in an earlier life. Headline: newly unpublished law regarding gifts and the expectation thereof, as specifically applies to those interested in affairs such as this. That which you fret about, you can't have. Headline: the only nourishment news the alert should require in their apparent efforts to change their state of being from normal to supernormal. There are no health foods to help, only poisons to harm. The supremely alert recognize the instant's applicability also to knowledge. The terminally perceptive further realize that silence is never malefic, while just the contrary is true of its opposite. A news item is a terrible thing. A chap asked a mystic, "Do you know, just kind of in general, what an enlightened man is?" "Oh, no," he replied. "I know exactly." Only the awake differentiate between being distracted and being entertained. Regarding your residency, we live throughout the entire building, but only seem to talk upstairs. And a man asked his architect, "Could this be a problem?" "Could be," he replied. "Different people have different wants as to where the hot spots and centers of activity are in their dwellings. And it might be noted that those with that certain interest spread their locus of focus to all areas of the structure. One egg, one basket. One mind, a unified man." Life puts everyone in original bondage. Those seeking enlightenment through their efforts do so themselves in an additional manner. Through talk does density and ignorance reproduce and sustain itself. Through silence does understanding. Headline: the complete basis for the apparent logical and self-corroborating reality of the mind's world, fully explained and laid bare in 9 words, 47 letters. Remember, this is explaining the reality, the logical substance of the mind's world. Well, this is going to be a challenge. In 8 words, clocks run clockwise and height is measured vertically. Once upon a time, long, long ago, and far, far away, there was a man who had this private motto: too much too soon, not enough later on. And of course, never forget what that man said more recently and closer to home: nothing can help, but everything can hinder, if you let it. One man offers us his latest suspicion. He says he's beginning to believe that if life didn't hear you talking all the time, that you might well be spared much of the general rain that falls on everyone. That could provide a whole new take on the notions of luck and fate. Huh, what? Everything discriminates itself. No need for you to do so. You can't hide the shape of things from a mirror. If it is about behavior that you are thinking and talking, you are in the dark, down a well, wrapped in inner chains. Don't waste your time on nothing. The basis for the bedazzlement of the mind is that there is only one nothing, but many somethings. A single stillness, a myriad of activities. As long as you talk, neither activity nor lack of activity is satisfying. Enough to give one second thoughts regarding all physical efforts to awaken, And somewhere, somebody says, hell, everything's enough to give me second thoughts about everything. At a spot where a side road split off from the main highway was a sign that read, thought is talk is thought, welcome to the path of sight and silence. Health news from another world. A dumb man cannot think. A dumb man cannot sleep. A dumb man's without complaints. Why can't we all shut up and be so well? Our thought for the day. If you're not physically starving, then all of your problems are due to your own inner commentary. Newly brought forward, thing to do, notion to pursue. Investigate, then answer yourself this. You're conscious of something, but what is it? Those who awoke at the sound of 4 words must now do so at 3, then at 2, then at 1. More about the payoff. The ceasing of searching is the actual treasure for which seekers unknowingly search. To know too much is to make a fist. To realize the nature of thought is for the hand to naturally relax. Once you recognize the basis of talk, after that, anything said about it is superfluous. One man's telling of it is this. First you discover enlightenment, then you lose it. Then you lose both it and you. And finally, on a scrap of paper were these words. Since my dog died and I awoke, I have no one to talk to. Since the subject of knowledge seemed to have reared its lovely, locked head, as did the subject of talk, for someone attempting to get past what they should discover as being some the uncharted limitations of knowledge, which are so severe as to render, once you get off the merry-go-round of the mind, a sequential thought, as to render the whole concept of knowledge as foolish. That is, for the purpose of changing knowledge, for the purpose of, as even ordinary people would say, changing their understanding. Or they would, of course, say increasing their understanding, which is the only reason people study, the only reason people go to school. outside of the desire for an increase in their monetary remunerations in life. The only reason that people recreational read outside the nonfiction area. The only reason that people in the beginning, and many people still, would listen to such as this, if they're interested in it, whatever the hell it is, and you ask them, why do you listen to that? Do they give door prizes? Do they have free beer? They give out hot dogs and door prizes. And you go, no. And you go, well, what's the purpose? Well, I learned something. All of this on the basis, the unquestioned basis, and the certainly non-negatable basis, if you're still on the merry-go-round, but this is all operating on the basis that additional knowledge in some way is an improvement in whatever the area is. This is done on the basis also that no one recognizes that knowledge is made up, and that to add new knowledge to what's already there is nothing. There was, it goes on continually. There's one example in the area of psychiatry. As they continue to change names, they do it in politics, they do it in a slower area. It's not important, but it happens some in religion. But it happens continually in the social sciences, the soft sciences, and a slightly retarded rate in the hard sciences of names being changed. And the explanation is the descriptions, laws. In science, they support it, they say, by reproducible experiments, that if the world of matter, just making this crudely, if the world of matter now is ruled by the different laws of quantum mechanics as opposed to Newton's mechanical laws, they would say it's because it was not that Newton was incorrect at the time, and all of his mathematical models of what gravity was and etc. But it took an Einstein, and it took several generations of people to continue investigation, and so now we have a greater understanding. The knowledge has moved forward. In the social sciences, they go from describing people as being, in times past, of just being crazy, to now saying that the people are not crazy, they're not nuts. We shouldn't say that because it doesn't tell you anything, but that we now, they'll pick out somebody who is a thief, and they'll say the person is not simply a thief, they're suffering from kleptomania, from a known, describable, or they'll say, well, this young girl over here that weighs 22 pounds and is 22 years old, that won't eat, that refuses to eat, she's not crazy. She is a victim of a known identifiable psychological illness, anorexia nervosa. This is taken as being progress. It is no such thing. It's not progress, but it is no such thing. If what you're dealing with is a pure fabrication, if it is fancy, then how can the changing of the fanciful terms be progress? It's not even an addition of anything. Even if you had let us take the world of psychiatry, since it has its share of critics, you do not have to be a supporter of the profession of psychiatry. You could be a detractor of it. And so you could say that just coming up with new terms and calling someone anorexic instead of saying that they're nuts for refusing to eat, you could dismiss that by saying that's no progress. It hasn't changed anything. The people are still starving themselves, and the psychiatrists still don't know what the hell to do, and so that's no progress. You could do that. But even ordinary people who would be capable of doing that, and that doesn't mean they understand anything. I don't mean that. There's always an audience for whatever's going on. There's always an audience of naysayers for anything that is actively taking place in man's mental world. But they would admit this. They have no other choice. They would admit, if you put it to them this way, if you said, if you ask an ordinary person who was a critic of psychiatry, and if you said, well, you're saying that by changing the names of classifications, by coming up with new terms, even though they claim that they now have better case evidence, there's been more clinical and statistical work on this type of person. And so you're saying that even though you deny that it's any progress to say that someone has gone from being a petty thief to suffering from a known disease, psychological ill, kleptomania, you're saying that that is no progress, right? And the person says, yeah, it doesn't do anything. It's just bullshit. And you say, well, at least it's an addition, even if you say that it's not worthy. It is additional knowledge of some kind, right? From their view. He said, well, yeah, it's something new because at one time there was no such term as kleptomania. At one time there was no such term as anorexia nervosa. So if you want to say that, even though I may not agree, would say the critic, even though I may not agree, it's certainly true that there is now an addition to the library of psychiatric information. Whether I agree with it, whether I think it's valid, whether I think it is useful or not, but you're correct. At one time there was no such knowledge, there was no such term, and everything that implies of anorexia nervosa or of kleptomania. And as I said, you could also do it in the hard sciences, but that is really pushing people's mind to deal with that. But in this area, the person would still say, they would admit, the mind has no choice. It doesn't have anything to do with the person. The mind has no choice but to admit if you have a new term for something, even if it proves to be less than totally valid, at least it is an addition to the library of knowledge in that area. You're an idiot. I mean, when you see it, I don't have to call you an idiot. You think, idiot. 50 years an idiot. 50 years of hearing everybody. I hesitate to even pick out examples such as psychiatry or science. All you've got to do is look, if you can do it, without your own inner unabating annotating as to what's going on in life. If you simply look, that is, and also listen to what's going on, all of the discussions, the debates, the discoveries in man's world, it's like a 3-card game. There's only 3 cards laying there, and you walk up, and they can play with the cards forever. But no new cards go on the little soapbox. There are no new cards dealt. All you've got, and those of you who can see this, my allegory, my metaphor, is lacking in a way that is, I believe, possibly singular. Because to say that there are no new additions in a fanciful world, I don't even think we should go down that particular path. But consider, that is one allegory that is almost beyond the universal, or a universal area of metaphor. Its allegories eat themselves. You're dealing with a world, once you see it, that there is no better term for it than absolutely invented. It is conjured from top to bottom. Anything that has a name, not just a word. Human minds, philosophers, and other assorted, verbally smart-ass people and commentators throughout history have gone as far as to say that words have no reality, that whatever word you say does not actually in any way begin to cover and to represent that which it purports to represent. That you cannot say, here is my wife, or here's my ex-wife over there. Boy, she was just a roaring bitch. And all your friends, everybody hears it. That in no manner explains that person. It is impossible. You cannot apply it to anything other than the most mundane subjects about which, if any disagreement did arise, would be irrelevant. Such as someone saying, we call that a cup. And someone says, oh, there's a perfect example. There is where language completely fails. What the hell? To say that's a cup There is just what I'm talking about, could say these kind of philosophically bent, inclined minds, and say, that doesn't begin to cover it. There is the basic fallacy, weakness of language. Anyway, it's past that. It is not simply that words are not what they represent, that words cannot be. Again, we're there. I don't know if anybody sees it. I'm not even going to start. This is the one place. Normally I can keep doing metaphors, and if you listen or do it yourself, you can keep expanding the metaphorical range of the card table upon which you're playing at the moment, and finally almost make sense of it or see something. But this one won't go anywhere because its metaphors right up against themselves. That is, it is the mind up against itself. It is an invented world up against a mirror. What's it going to reflect? The metaphor doesn't make any sense, no matter what I come up with. That is, to pick on language, to pick on anything the mind does, is the height. Once you see it, you'll go, oh. You might not go, oh, because perhaps you're not as sadistic to yourself, which just shows you don't know you. Well, never mind. Spoil the palm, spoil the brain. I believe that's from the Quran. I could be wrong. There is nothing. It is the world's greatest trap for someone attempting to change, for someone to change their understanding, to expand their understanding, to see anything new in life. It is the greatest trap possible to criticize anything. And to make it a bit more specific within the bounds within which I seem to be palavering on this fine evening, would say, of course, a man's mental world. To criticize anything that is an output of man's mental world. The trap is that you are criticizing that which does not exist. But the ordinary mind, you're going to criticize, to make it simple, you're going to criticize, you'll spend half your time criticizing other people's ideas, one way or the other, either overtly to yourself, from what you're reading, from what you're hearing. So you spend half the time, just make it rough and easy, half the time you're presenting your ideas. Then the rest of the time you're criticizing other people's ideas. Now that keeps the mental world going. If you didn't understand the news item, I compared man's mental world, the collective mental world of man, is like Macy's big Thanksgiving Day parade, I assume everyone knew, with these huge balloons, normally of cartoon figures. And I point out that man's mental world is just like those figures, that everyone must contribute hot air to keep it afloat. And you cannot keep it afloat without there being conflicting hot airs. So any idea that is alive, in whatever nature, the only reason that the idea of God survives is you've got a whole lot of people always saying he doesn't exist. The only reason that you've got the idea that there's an afterlife is you've got a whole lot of people that go, no, there's not, can't prove it. The only reason that anything, whatever it is, and it can be very minor, be some, whatever the prevailing political idea is, that we should have a balanced budget, that we should, whatever it is, something to do with economics, something to do with social sciences, the way we should treat those who appear to be mentally ill, the way we should treat those who appear to be antisocial in their behavior. Now, I'm not talking about the physical acts of people hurting each other, you understand? That's why I said the mental world. The world of ideas, if there's any idea right now that has any currency, that you could bring up in a bar, on the halls, in the floor of Congress, in the halls of the Vatican, on the streets of Venice, watch your feet. If you can bring up an idea at a coffee shop, at a sidewalk cafe, and someone will discuss it with you. In other words, the idea, people will discuss. Then the idea does not have total acceptance. What keeps it alive is there being conflicting ideas. By now anybody should be able to see that. Whether you make anything out of it or not is just simply a fact. Things that there's no conflict about, there's no discussion. I don't know how far you would have to look nowadays, of course I guess you could, but to find people who would actually still be discussing the notion of gravity. no matter what they call it. Now, I don't believe there's such a thing as the law of gravity. I don't like the guy who came up with the term. You can say all of that. No, never mind. You got to see this by now. So it is necessary that there be conflicting views, that is, that generally half the views, half the attitudes toward anything, any idea that's alive on this planet, now, at any time, in the past, in the future, if the idea is alive, then there's got to be a large amount of criticism. But here's the point. The trap is, if you're attempting to see beyond the normal range of what people understand in life, including the geniuses, is to understand that you're criticizing something that does not exist. It's not the fact of criticism itself, which is about as far as people even get in speculation, ordinary people, which is the idea that manifests itself like, well, we shouldn't criticize one another's religion because we're all on the same path to God. That almost sounds good, except there's no such thing as God. I mean, what's the idea of saying, well, we're on the same path? No, you're not. There's no such path. You're a moron. I mean, to take it seriously, you're an idiot. So the point is, it's not to criticize something. That's not the danger. Even though people, as I said, ordinary minds have gotten that far off and on, and you can still round up some amens for that to say, well, we should not be so critical. Yeah, you're right. There's probably some area of agreement, such as in religion, such as in politics. We must sit down and reason that there's some basis of agreement. You're crazy. You're not anorexic, unless you want to use it metaphorically. You are very short. You have no weight, no flesh on your gray cells. They are skin and bones and about to pass away and blow away. You're an idiot. I'll do it again. I end up here, I am sounding like a Jimmy Swaggart stand-in. By God, you're an idiot. No, you're not. But notice, ordinary people can hear that, and about half of them go, yeah, people are idiots. And about half of them go, who the hell are you talking to? I'm no idiot. Of course, that's the dangerous thing, that you're not an idiot of every day. Anyway, back to it's simply this. The rest of this is indeed screed. Anything you talk about literally does not exist from top to bottom. It simply does not exist. And there is no way to say it simpler. And when you see it, assuming you do have a more tender forehead than I do, you'll want to find me and go, idiot! But go ahead and do it yourself in case I'm not available. Or maybe slap your thigh. Anything will do. Or hit a table. The whole idea of people changing their consciousness or having extraordinary states, until you've gone through a great deal of it, I know how fascinating, and I certainly never would I try to discourage anyone or to say anything to distract from it. But once you get past a certain, at least a few experiences, a certain time involved after having such experiences, you have got to see one thing. That is what people call knowledge. It is what people believe that they are thinking, which amounts to nothing but talk, whether to themselves or someone else. It's to yourself, as you know now, when I say talk is what I am, unless specifying otherwise, is what I'm referring to. It is talk that keeps you where you are. It is talk that makes you an idiot. It's talk that keeps you from seeing what's going on in life. It does not interfere with life. If you're satisfied with that, there's nothing wrong with it, and blah, blah, blah. Talk is what has produced fans, television, lights, the laws of gravity, not things falling, but the laws of gravity, mental hospitals, shock treatments, Prozacs, rabbis, ministers, sociologists, social workers, counselors, traffic cops, meter maids, lawyers, convicts. What do you want? Every time you talk, what you're doing is just saying, I'm an idiot, I'm a moron. If you're talking, for those of you that might be watching this and you think you missed anything, if you're thinking, are you happy? If you're talking, you're an idiot. Whatever you're talking about means nothing. No matter what you're talking about, you don't understand it. If you understood it, you wouldn't be talking about it. There's nothing to say. There's nothing to know. And it appears absolutely otherwise. If you're on the knowing carousel. Because every time you get new knowledge, every time you hear about new knowledge, people taking notes, people going to classes, people buying the latest book, people saying, well, I have some new, really useful information. They buy new books on how to awaken. New information discovered about the life of Abraham, of Muhammad. New facts, heretofore unknown. And you think, oh, I'm getting somewhere now. Moron. Idiot. You can't get anywhere with knowledge. You can't get anywhere with thinking. You can't get anywhere with talking. But when you're in the midst of it, what I just said is insane. What I just said is the idiocy. Because you think, well, it's got to be of some help because we now have new facts that we didn't have before. No, you don't. You have new words. You have new terms. Oh, no, you're just being silly. You're just playing with words yourself. We have new knowledge. Show it to me. Bring it out and lay it right here. Put it in my hand and I'll believe it. Of course, the whole point of this is not to lecture the world. It's you. You think, well, and it happens so subtly, it's why I draw out these very crude and bombastic at times examples, because to yourself, you cannot, it's hard to come up with a continuing sensation, even on a periodic, spasmodic basis, that you are dealing in knowledge with yourself. What you're doing, you're just used to this habitual running through your head of you annotating, commenting totally on what's going on, which all you're commenting on is commenting. And so you don't, by any means, I can't foresee people being able to stop and look at it in this manner, because if you could do that, you'd be free from it anyway. But to be aware of the fact that you're taking this as a continuing, because if you ask it, or if I ask you, and you're in an ordinary state of mind, that is, you're talking, you're running the commentary on life, and if I said, is what you're doing now, is what you normally do, other than daydreams, you have to always give people a way out, other than just being distracted and daydreaming, is what goes on up here, is it intended, if it's not all the time useful, first you can say, is it useful? And according to how intelligent, in the ordinary sense, and how hip they are, people would say, well, I do daydream, and I can't say that all of my thinking processes that go on, I can't say that they're all useful. And I say, all right, I understand that. We all daydream. Okay. But do you consider that what is running up here, that the purpose of it, and you and all right-thinking, decent, civilized, educated people, that the purpose of it is to not only improve yourself, but to add to the collective knowledge and improve man? And the answer is certainly yes. I'd look at you like an idiot. Well, certainly it is. That's what you need to notice, is you take this without any analyzation. As I pointed out before, part of the difficulty is that you were born with this, it's always been there, and it's inside your head. And so to try and talk about it as though it's a foreign agent, as though it has no connection to your life, to you, is way beyond difficult. If you're listening to it up here, it's impossible to see what I'm pointing to. But if you can get free from it, then you realize you can catch your own glimpse. To ask yourself, is what I'm trying to get you to consider, to ask yourself, does this serve any use? Not just in the theoretical sense now, we've done that, but on the basis of knowledge that I'm continuing to think. And you do learn new facts. Probably as hip as and sophisticated, as literate and intellectually curious and alive, as I'll assume a kind of audience would be for such as this for some length of time, you would probably say that every day, if nothing else, through watching the news, reading the newspaper, that you collect new information. I see here such and such company is about to issue a new Class B stock, a non-voting stock, And somebody here, the writer of the column, said this could be an extremely good time to get in to the market vis-a-vis that class of stock. Oh, I see over here, some psychiatrists say that there maybe there's some evidence that there could be some genetic basis for being a kleptomaniac. Ooh, that's interesting. You might go back and read again. John Hopkins, you might even repeat it later that afternoon at a cocktail party. Do you know that now they're saying that such things as kleptomania may have a genetic, really? Well, yeah, I saw it was somebody, John Hopkins, I believe. You're so used to it, you take that. An ordinary person would say, well, now, it didn't make me any richer. Even reading about that stock market. Just from reading it, it didn't make me any richer. It may. I'm remembering it. I wrote down the stock. And I'm going to call my broker tomorrow. And so this could pay off. You cannot tell the mind that it does not pick up new knowledge, much less that it may not be useful or that it can't be useful. As I said, that's a criticism. You need to back up and to see that the idea of criticizing or to saying, well, to your mind, is to say, well, you're reading about what's going on at universities or new theories of how to deal in the stock market. That's a waste of time. You're criticizing it. You need to go back and realize that the whole thing is made up. That's what you got to keep looking for. And it's like a door that opens, you get glimpses of it. You can't prove it. I can't talk you into it, and I sure as hell can't hector you into it. But it's not open to criticism. It's foolish. The only thing foolisher than the mental world is criticisms thereof. So I can say that the only way to be dumber, more moronic, more ignorant than the average person, than an ordinary person, is to criticize the ordinary world. But even that doesn't help you much, because if you're that ignorant, you can't even see it. Even if you become twice as ignorant. There's a great cosmic New Age law that says you cannot rise above your ignorance in life, or something like that. That only those super ignorant can see how ignorant they are. No, wait a minute. If you're ignorant, wait a minute, I'll get it. I read it in a book or something. If you're ignorant and then you are twice as ignorant, then you've got to be more non-ignorant than everybody else to even realize that you're more ignorant. Is that it? Well, trust me. Every time you criticize the mental world, anytime you criticize anything, if there were a God, boy, would he be having a royal laugh at you. I just want you to know that. Maybe that'll help. When you're desperate, try guilt. Tell yourself, I don't understand it, but God, knowing in general how stupid I am, I should be embarrassed. I should stop this. And of course, that's easy. Only the ordinary go, well, yes, but it's hard to stop drinking, smoking, wanting to screw strange people. No. I'm going to get you anywhere. Once you understand, there's only one thing to stop, and that is